Mr Speaker, I don't know where that member's been spending his time, because certainly where I spend my time in Papakura, people are very happy. In fact, they're extraordinarily happy that we have such a fantastic government. And I have to say, this is the best budget I've ever remembered, actually. It's certainly the best budget I've seen in my 8 years in Parliament, which actually, frankly, isn't saying much, apart from last year's budget, which was pretty good too. But what it is, it's a budget of aspiration, it's a budget that's fair, it's a budget that starts to give people back more of their own money so they can make decisions. And that member who's just resumed his seat asked what's happening in health. Well, I can tell him that. Tell him what's happening in health. We've got an awful lot of elective surgery going. The only cuts I can tell him is going on are the surgery cuts, because people are actually getting their surgery nowadays. And in counties Manukau, in my region, we've actually now got the most fantastic amount of elective surgery going on, and an awful lot of that's got to do with the leadership that Tony Ryle, the Honourable Tony Ryle, is showing in the health sector. He's actually demanding that we get the surgery, that we're demanding that the frontline services get the support it needs, and that we have fewer and fewer reports like the Labor government used to do. Labor used to talk about how they're going to have health, so they had a lot of reports, and that's about all they got. Didn't get the surgery, but they got the reports. An awful lot of money invested into all sorts of long-winded reports that nobody read, but it made Labor feel as though they were helping someone. Well, they were helping their mates, not the people who paid the bills. This budget delivers the most extensive rework and readjustment of the tax system that anybody can frankly remember. For 45 years, it's the most fantastic rejig of it. And what it actually does is Labor spent all their time in the run-up to the budget saying that we were just going to give tax cuts to the rich. Well, actually, nobody remembered to tell them that the really rich people in this country don't pay much tax. They certainly never paid at the top end of the tax. And I recall seeing an article just the other day from Sam Morgan, a very rich New Zealander, who cited that he didn't pay any tax. Well, that was, of course, under the previous regime. Well, he'll certainly be paying a little bit more GST now, and that's one way of getting the tax. But actually, there was one person who wrote to me in Papakura who was upset with the budget, and he's not going to vote National anymore. And the reason is because he's got 10 residential properties that he leases out. And he's obviously being affected by the Working for Families rort that we sorted out. And he's not going to vote for us anymore because he'd rather obviously vote for someone else who's going to let him rort the Working for Families system. Well, I think we can probably do without a vote from someone like that, and I think we'd be very proud to be a party that actually starts to even up the tax system. Because if there was ever a rort, it was that sort of rort, where people could have multiple numbers of residential properties and then turn around and then claim a Working for Families tax credit that was supposed to be set up for people who are hard-working Kiwis trying to get ahead with young children to help them, and instead being rorted by people like that. And frankly, he knows what he can do. Well, one of the things that we've heard from Labor is they're talking about lots of slogans tonight, and I've heard the previous speaker talk about personal abuse and then delivered a whole lot of personal abuse at my colleagues over this side, which I have to say is not a very good thing for a new member in this House to learn. Much better to stick to the issues. What we're seeing here is some very sensible government spending. Every big government department is having to look at how it spends its money. And that's not new just to my departments in police and corrections and veterans affairs, but we're all having to do that. And there's a reason for that, is that, other than in forestry, money really doesn't grow on trees. Someone has to pay it. And for us, it's all got to be paid by the taxpayer. And the taxpayer should be able to know that we're spending their money wisely in their best interest, the very best that we can. And there's always going to be circumstances where we think, well, we need to trial something, see how that works. It may not work out. But it is very important that everybody in the public service is focused on trying to get the best value for the taxpayer, and understanding that although the budget helps to deliver this money, none of it comes unless we have the taxpayer paying it. And that's why we need an economy to grow. When we look at the sort of growth measures in the budget, we can look at the research, science and development work that's gone on there, and the huge input into actually trying to grow our science sector. For years and years and years we saw big inputs into the arts, and I think that was probably a good thing, but unfortunately not the same emphasis on the science sector. For some reason, a country like New Zealand, an economy like ours, built on agriculture and all the other things that spin off from that, should have been investing better in the sciences, and yet for years we weren't. So that's being turned around under this budget. What we're seeing as well is some extremely good work in social development around getting people back into work, making sure that it's worth people's while to work, and that's one of the great things of the tax cuts, is they're not just for the rich, not at all like Labor said it was going to be, but actually right across the spectrum, so that every working New Zealander will have a chance to save some more money and will actually have an incentive to earn some more money. Many of us know of instances where people have said, there's no point going for a higher paying job because I'll lose my working for families credit, or it'll all go up in it'll go in tax because they'll shift into a higher tax league. Under this budget, we've got lots of police officers, lots of corrections officers, lots of nurses now getting a reasonable tax rate rather than being absolutely called the rich and therefore earning over $70,000, therefore you have to pay this extraordinarily high rate of tax that Labor thought we should have, the envy tax. So what we think is very important is to trust Kiwis, give them back some more of their money, let them keep it, and then let them make decisions. Well, no wonder people couldn't save under the previous government. It was all going in tax. And was the government then saving? No. An awful lot of low-value, high-paid spending was going on. It's extremely important that we always keep this focus, though, on what is productive. In the corrections areas, I'd like to talk a little bit about an innovation that my colleague, the Honourable Dr. Peter Sharples, is bringing in, and that's the Whare Oranga Ake, which is actually all about looking at rehabilitation and reintegration, particularly in a Maori context. And obviously there will be a focus on trying to deal with the massive recidivism that we have in our prisons, particularly around Maori offending. And why that's important is because if we could start to bring Maori offending down to the same levels as the rest of the community, we would actually not have to have all the prisons we currently have now. So one of the things we're trying to do here, and unfortunately the Labor Party, particularly the Honourable Clayton Cosgrove, called it a separate Maori justice system, when it's not, of course not at all. What it's actually doing is trying to look at what might work. And so Dr. Sharples, he's got funding under this budget, and I'm very proud to be able to support him in this, to start 2 of these units so we can start them going, see if they can make a positive difference, and I think if they are a positive force, I'd like to hope that all parties in this House would see the value of that. In the police, we're continuing with our 600 extra police by the end of next year. We have now got about 350 extra police on the beat in frontline roles since we became the government, and many of those have gone into the county's Manukau area. My opponent, Mr Cosgrove, last year said that it was an ill-thought-out scheme to have extra police in Counties Manukau. Well, go and tell that to the people of Counties Manukau. I quite enjoy going around Manurewa and Papakura and other areas in Counties Manukau, around my patch, and saying to them when they talk about how they feel so much safer now, well, the Labor Party wouldn't actually agree with that because they didn't think we should be able to have 300 extra police on the beat in Counties Manukau. Well, it's making a huge difference, and I'm extremely pleased with the way in which the police have taken up the challenge as well, to modernise the way in which they do policing, to look at alternative dispute resolution as well, to actually trial different ways of doing things, and having that extra support in terms of people, but also in terms of the almost $200 million extra that we gave them in last year's budget, which, by the way, has been characterised by the Labor Party as a $20 million loss. Only Labor maths could actually do that. What they're doing is some very innovative work, and I'm extraordinarily proud of the work they're doing, the work that Corrections is doing, and Veterans Affairs, I think, are a great little organisation working very well with Defence. I'm very pleased with that. We've also, by the way, I'll just finish, Mr Speaker, on the basis that we've also kept the Serious Fraud Office, which the Labor government was getting rid of, had legislation about to go through its 3rd reading before, thankfully, the people of New Zealand voted a national-led government in.
The Honourable